back. My name is Eric. Today is February 22nd. It's a Saturday, and it is 16:01 Eastern Standard Time. Hello. So, last week I was working on building my Kraken bot through some CI/CD pipelines on Git, and unfortunately I have little to report on that front. I did not have a tremendous amount of time to work on that. So we're going to do it live. Today what I want to do is kind of skip over some of the problems that I have been having with building my Docker container on Git. I'm also going to not worry about hosting the container on Git just yet. In the future I will come back to that, but for now, just to keep the project rolling, we are going to build the Docker container locally and then push it to GitHub, or excuse me, not GitHub, DockerHub. And then we are going to deploy that Docker container to the Kubernetes cluster using Ansible. So let me just take this opportunity at the very beginning to remind you that this stream is hosted on owncast.eom.dev. You are welcome to join us live. So far, the pattern has been Saturdays at 4 Eastern Standard Time, but that may change in the future. The chat for the live stream is hosted on Matrix. You will find a link to that on Owncast. And also, subsequent discussions are hosted on Discourse. If you're watching this on YouTube, then obviously you can leave comments there, but links will be in the description. So, without further ado, let us jump right into it. So, here is the Kraken bot. We'll zoom in as usual. So, if this is the first video you're seeing, then you will probably not know what Kraken bot is. I have been discussing it in the previous streams, so if you would like to see more of how this application actually works, then feel free to check those out. But today what we are going to do is build this application as a Docker container, push it to DockerHub, and then deploy it to Kubernetes. This is a Python application. You can see we have an init.py, app.py at the top level, and our internal components are all defined here. A lot of the files here are actually not being used at the moment. I need to clean this up a bit. You're still welcome to browse the code on Git. But anyway, let us go ahead and build it. What we have is a Dockerfile right here. And these are pretty simple, and this is pretty simple. This is a pretty simple example. What we are going to do in a Dockerfile is outline how we want to build a container. And our first line is going to be from Debian, which is we are just going to use the base Debian image and build on top of that. If you browse some of the other repositories I have hosted here, you will see other Docker files that are a bit more complex and that will pull from other containers that are themselves a bit more complex. You can build pretty much anything you need using this. This is just a very simple example. So anyway, from this Debian instance, we are going to just update the apt repositories and install pip, and then we are going to use pip to install the requirements for this application, which are enumerated here in the requirements.txt. I think there may be a few that are missing. It's been a while since I worked on this. This one's 5 months old. So we're also going to copy the contents of this repository into the Docker container. So at the end of this, we will have a container that has all of the system requirements installed and all of the source code copied over. And if we remember from some of the previous streams, our app.py is intended to be run as a single execution. So you will execute this app.py file. It will run once, in which the bot will update, and then the bot will run. I think this may be outdated. I might need to push a commit up here, and I will do that on stream here in just a moment. But point being, this app.py runs once, and then the system dies. So this Docker container is not intended to live for very long. It's not supposed to be persistent. It is going to do one thing, and then it is going to go away. So let's go ahead and build this container. Pull up the Docker file again, put this on the left, and let's put my terminal on the right. Okay. So I am already in my terminal. I'm already in the directory of this Kraken bot. That would be this top level directory right here. And I'm going to run the command what's this called? And before I do that, let's go over to DockerHub. And I want to see, I hope I'm going to be able to log in on this, or that I already am. I already am. Lovely. Yes, it's called KrakenBot. So I have already gone through the steps on DockerHub here of creating a repository. I gave it the name KrakenBot and a short description. So when I am eventually ready to push this container to DockerHub, there is a place for it to go. But what I'm looking for here is just this name, ericomian/KrakenBot. I'll zoom in a bit. I have to do that per website, so that's a little bit annoying, but anyway. So I just want to copy that name over here. So I'm going to build the contents of this directory, and I'm going to give it the tag ericomian/KrakenBot and also the other tag latest. I guess this is more of a name, and that's the tag, but I digress. So let's build this container, and let's see if we can watch it execute these steps. They go by kind of quick, so let's see what happens. Okay, we are sending a build context to the Docker daemon. I have no idea how long this is going to take, so this may not have been the best idea to do on a live stream. I'm trying to quickly think of something that I may do in the meantime if this ends up taking too long. Hopefully, this will not need to do all that much. Okay, from Debian. So it's going to go to DockerHub, and it is going to get the base Debian image, which we can take a little look at. This one. So it is just grabbing this latest image here. It is pulling it down. If I have to download this for the first time, again, this may take a minute. It's not the largest container in the world, but given that I am currently live streaming, there's a lot of network activity. This may in fact take a minute, which I did not anticipate when I planned out this stream. So that's okay. We'll just see how it does. It's not doing too bad. Hopefully it only needs to do one of those. Usually it needs like 4 or 5. I guess it's downloading chunks, and that's what this hash is referring to, is a chunk of this container. But we'll see what happens here. The next step is going to be updating the apt repositories, which it's going to do right now. Lovely. This also may take some time. Again, with the live stream going on, downloads may be impacted here. I don't think there are any live viewers. No, there are not. That's okay. On top of it making me a little bit more comfortable live streaming, it slows down the network traffic. So in this instance, the fewer the better. We'll probably run into the same issue again once it does pip install only for those packages. And again, I may need to, let's actually, in the meantime here, let's check if this needs to be updated on Git. I'll just tell it to push, and if there are any changes, they will be pushed. Nope. Okay, it's up to date. I'm a little curious. We'll see what happens when I actually deploy it. Now, in the version of this that I demonstrated last time, I was specifically showing off. Uh-oh, that's red. I'm gonna pretend that's fine. So, yes, in the version I was showing off last week, we were showing the updates to logging on a Matrix chat over here. This is my Element client, and what we wanted was the Kraken bot to post into this room. It did post into the room last week. I deleted the message just because it was nothing. And this week, once it's deployed, I may have to wait until the top of the hour before seeing that it is logging anything in this chat. The reason being, in the code over here, I believe it was our Kraken bot, I had put in a log message like right here. Yeah, this one right here. I just put in an extra log message last week that would say that it was running at the start of the program, and I deleted that log message. So what I am building here to the right now no longer has that. So once it's deployed, we may have to wait to see that it's actually running. But that's okay. For most of what I'm deploying here today, the results of that will need to be seen next week once we look at both some log messages and the actual performance of this Kraken bot, which maybe, since this is loading stuff, let's go ahead and just give a brief introduction to what this is going to do, just in case this is the first episode you're seeing here. To my left is kraken.org, or not kraken.org, kraken.com, which is a website for exchanging cryptocurrencies via an API. And so what our bot here is doing is basically at the top of every hour, it is going to use the API of this website to find which market has had the largest increase in value over the past 24 hours, and it is going to move our investment onto that market. This is not the best strategy in the world. It's just a beginner to demonstrate that these things are working. So over here to the right, we can see that it is now pip installing our requirements. So that shouldn't take very long. But anyway, I think the schedule can be configured. The number of investments that are being made can be configured, and the amount to be invested per investment can be configured on this Kraken bot once it's deployed. And I think at the very beginning, we can see at the top here, I only have $89 in here. I had more than that previously, but I was kind of screwing around, and and it didn't go great. That's fine. This is for fun. So, kind of. I do hope it's profitable in the future, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, it's not going to be using the wisest strategy at the very beginning. We're just trying to get something that is going to be making some trade on these markets and then telling me about it in the Matrix chat. Okay, that's just a warning. We don't care about warnings. I'll take a sip of water while we are waiting here. And I also want to take a timestamp for when we do the push. I'm not quite ready for that yet. There we go. I guess I am. Okay, so it looks like this built successfully, which is great. So now what I want to do is take that container and push it over to DockerHub. This is going to make it available later when I am trying to deploy it to the Kubernetes cluster. So all I need to do now is push. I'll do that so you can see the full command. And that should just work, hopefully. Once again, we are dealing with the network, so this may in fact take a moment. Now, it would be wise for me to run this container locally before I deploy it to Kubernetes, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to deploy it. We'll see what happens. Again, I'm not sure why it shows multiple hashes here. I guess it's deploying it in chunks. I'm not exactly sure. But this does seem to be taking quite a fair amount of time. So while that is building or pushing, let's go ahead and talk about how this is going to be deployed. So I'm going to take another timestamp here. And we're going to move on to talking about Ansible while that's running. So the repository that we have been looking at so far for this Kraken bot has been mostly Python code, and it's all the Python code for interacting with the Kraken API, processing the data that we gather from that API, making decisions based on that processed data, and then interacting with the API again, also our matrix logging, etc. The actual deployment of this into a production environment is handled in another repository. So next to our Kraken bot repository, there is Ansible role Kraken bot. And this just has an Ansible role. I have described Ansible in previous live streams, so feel free to go back and see those. But this is just a automated pipeline for how I want to deploy this to my Kubernetes cluster. And just as a brief note on Ansible, it's creating an idempotent deployment. So if I run the same Ansible role over the same Kubernetes cluster twice, it should see that this is already deployed and no longer needs to be. So this Ansible role, we can just see in the task file. I'm going to come back to this later to show more details as to what this is deploying and why. This defines what is being deployed, and the actual code to call that exists in yet another repository. So if you've been following along with these live streams, you will be familiar with our software infrastructure repository. This is the big repository, also containing Ansible playbooks and roles, used to deploy all of the services that I am using right now. So this Git website, my own cast streams, the matrix server, all of those deployments are defined in here, as well as the underlying infrastructure for configuring the server into a Kubernetes cluster of 15 virtual machines. Again, previous live streams are where that has been described. What I want to show you here is that our software infrastructure repository contains a folder for Ansible roles. And these roles are all Git submodules. If you're not familiar with Git submodules, it's basically a way of putting a Git repository inside of a Git repository. And we can see right down here, we have the Kraken bot. A bit misleading, this name. It looks like it is pointing to just the Kraken bot as opposed to Ansible role Kraken bot. But if we look at all of these, there is a pattern of, maybe it's not obvious just from looking at mine. It's more obvious if you start looking at, say, Jeff Geerling's examples. The actual Git repository that Jeff Geerling has is called Ansible role Kubernetes or Ansible role NFS. And it's just when you clone it into your local repository that the name gets changed into geerlingguy.docker or geerlingguy.helm, etc. So I was following the pattern there, and I'm using ericomian.krakenbot, taking off the prefix of Ansible role. This is actually pointing to the Ansible role. and I think I need to update this repository because if I click on this, it will not bring me to the correct place. So, perfect timing. Isn't that great? We are going to do a quick update on our software infrastructure. We'll modify our Git modules. And here, Kraken bot. Okay, so I think what needs to be updated is actually just git. Yep. So the URL over here, what is existing on git is pointing to git.eom.dev, and I have changed it to git.eom.dev to follow a pattern of what is that called? The subdomain being the full name of whatever service it is pointing to, or the service to which it is pointing. Anyway, so it is actually correct in my local version of this. I just need to push a change to update it. Let's see. Do I have changes? I'm just going to push only want to change that one, and I am the only person working on this. You know, I have been showing opening issues and making a pull request and going through like a pipeline of work, but something as small as that, I don't mind just updating it. So now when I click on things, it should work a little bit better, unless I also need to do something else. Hey, there we go. So now it leads to our Ansible role Kraken bot. So cool. Now, over here in the actual version, what do I want to do? I want to update. Yep. So just to make sure that the Ansible role that exists on git is the one that I have locally, I'm going to do an update, and it should pull that down. And while it's doing that, let's look at the defaults and make sure that I have a good timestamp. Yep, we are good. Okay, so it pulled down a new version of our Ansible role. I'm not sure what the change was. Doesn't really matter. Point being, we are now up to date. So our software infrastructure repository contains the Ansible role used to deploy the Kraken bot. And what we'll see in our tasks, if we go to main, let's take a look at what this is actually going to put into Kubernetes. And I will take a timestamp of that. Okay. First, it's going to just create a namespace, which is just a space in the Kubernetes cluster for things to exist. I can show you an example of that. SSH back to the control plane. If you're not familiar with Kubernetes at all, this is probably not your best entry point for it. But anyway, this is the control plane for the cluster. And if I get namespace, we can see that I have a namespace for discourse. I have a namespace for git. I have a namespace for owncast. And each of those namespaces is going to contain the resources that are deployed into it. How should I have said that? Forget it. We're going to move past that one. So if we just look at the pods, for instance, we can see all of the different Docker containers that are running in this namespace. So what I am doing over here in this Ansible role is first creating that namespace so that we have a place into which we will deploy our resources, of which there is one. A single resource that is a CronJob. This is the same kind of cron that exists on Linux machines for setting up actions to be executed on a timer. So if you want it to execute once every minute, or maybe at the top of the hour, or maybe once a month on the last day of the month, or maybe you want it to happen every Tuesday at 3:33 p.m. However you want your task to be executed, you can define that in cron. And Kubernetes has a similar concept with cron, where you can define a Kubernetes task to execute on a timer or a schedule of some sort. In this case, if you recall how I was describing that the actual Kraken bot is executed once as a one-shot execution, so we update the bot and then we execute trades and then the Docker container is going to die. It was designed like that specifically so that we could use this Kubernetes cron job. What's going to happen is that our Kubernetes cluster, on whatever schedule we define, is going to pull down a Docker container. It is going to deploy it into the cluster. The code on it will be executed, and then it will die and just go away. And this makes it pretty efficient for me to not have to leave this running 24/7. The bot will just come online every once in a while, do what it needs to do, and then it will exit the cluster, leaving resources available for other things that are running all the time. Okay. An important aspect of this is our image pull policy. So this is something you can define most of the time. I think it's all the time. You can always define this. Basically, it defines the behavior of when it is going to update the Docker image that it is using. So in this case, well, by default, it is only going to update your Docker image when it does not already have the Docker image. So what this would do if I did not have this set is that the cron job would be deployed, and at the first time that it was executed, it would download my Kraken bot, and then every subsequent time it would run the exact same container that it already has. And so what I've done is defined this image pull policy as always, which states that every single time that the cron schedule says to execute the container, it is going to pull down the latest version. What this allows me to do is, over here in the actual Kraken bot, if I decide to implement a new strategy or model the market in some new way, I can just push my changes over here. In the future, hopefully they will automatically build using git actions, pushing it to git packages, and then the very next time that the cron job executes, it will pull down the latest version of the code and it will be live in production. That's the goal. Let's take a look at what the initial settings are for this. Over in our defaults, our namespace is called Kraken, and our schedule is 00 star star star. I kind of don't remember what that means. I think it is minute, hour, day. What? Let's Google it. There we go. Can you see that? Minute, hour, day of the month, day of the week. So, what was it again? Side by side. Minute. So when the minute is 0, so it will only execute at the top of an hour, and then hour is 0. So it will only execute at the beginning of a day. So this is going to execute but every single day of the month, and every single month of the year, and every single day of the week. That's a little weird. I'm not sure you need to specify all of those all of the time, but anyway, point being, this is going to run once a day at the very beginning of the day at midnight. And I can change this so that it executes whenever I like. I can make it run every minute. I can make it run every hour. All I have to do is change this value using this syntax, and this would require me to update Kubernetes. So what is defined in the Ansible role? I should make this a little bit more clear, so let me back up another step. When I was saying that any updates I make to the Kraken bot will take effect immediately, that is specifically changes that happen within the Kraken bot. These values that we're looking at right now are defined in the Ansible role, which is defining how it is deployed into Kubernetes. So if I want to change how it is deployed in Kubernetes, I need to run the Ansible role again. Those changes do not take effect from new versions of the Docker container. That should be pretty obvious, but just thought I'd make it clear. Anyway, these values, the R value target, the investment count, well, investment count's kind of interesting. Investment volume is as well. So R value target, we're going to ignore R value. Let's just not worry about it right now. Investment count, this is how many investments I'm going to have it maintain at a given moment. So at the moment, it's saying to do 3 investments of $10. And then these next 2 values we're also going to ignore for now. So point being, this controls how many investments we are going to maintain, and this controls how large those investments are. And I don't think that's the version I actually want to run. So let's see, do I have, where would this be defined? Oh, I'll define it. I know where I'll define it. We're gonna come back to that. Let me take a sip of water here. Check my notes. Okay. We're just going to jump right into deploying this, and you'll see where those are going to be defined in just a moment. So if we go to, we're in software infrastructure. I just want to do test.yaml. And this is a very simple playbook that I have created for the purpose of deploying one thing at a time. The main playbook is really, really long. And it defines all of getting this network configured. And the idea with it being idempotent is that I should be able to have the Kraken bot deployment as part of this one big file. And it should just run through the whole thing and say, yep, everything's up to date, everything's good to go, except for the Kraken bot, we're going to deploy that. But that's kind of tedious and a waste of time. So I have this test.yaml where I can single out a single thing and have just that deployed. And so what I want is Kraken bot. So here is a playbook, an Ansible playbook, in which we are referencing the Ansible role Kraken bot. I have a secrets.yaml file that contains things such as my Kraken API token, my Kraken username, sensitive data like that, and I'm not going to show that to you, but it does exist on my system, so when the time comes, know that it is there. Okay, and what I also want to do is define here vars. I think this is the correct syntax. I might need to double check this. Let's use AI to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. I got distracted by my previous chats over to the side. Not sure what I was probably just harassing the bot. I do, after I get the answer I'm looking for, I sometimes do like to just gaslight the bot just for fun. Anyway, so show me an Ansible role with what? Extra vars defined. That's not quite what I wanted to do. No, Oh. This is kind of what I was looking for, but it's not doing it in exactly the way I wanted. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. And okay, perfect. So let's see. What I want to define is our investment count. I want to have one investment, and volume, I want it to, we have at our disposal $89, so I'm just going to say put 50. Give it some room to lose some money. Hopefully it will gain. And I think that's all I need to define on this, because this is not being used. This is not being used. This is what I want. It's going to run once a day, and that R value target works for me. Okay, so we should be good to deploy this. I'll just take another quick look, and we will. There we go. I already have that one in because I use this command a lot, but this is the command that I'm going to use to actually call that test.yaml playbook, which again references our Ansible role Kraken bot, and this is going to put that Docker container that we have put onto DockerHub into my Kubernetes cluster. And if we go back to the actual cluster and look at our namespaces, go down to K, you can see there is no Kraken namespace, and in a moment that should change. If we come back, where is that thing that I was referencing? That secrets.yaml, I forget where I mentioned that. That is where it's asking for this vault password. That is an encrypted Ansible vault, and so it asked me for a password here to decrypt it. Again, I'm not going to show you that, but okay, so now it is going to execute the steps listed here. It failed. We'll figure out why. Let's see. Create the Kraken bot namespace. It did that. We can go back to the alpha control plane and run the same command, and we have our Kraken namespace. That's good. What did it not like here? Cannot unmarshal number into Go struct field. So it probably doesn't like the way I defined a variable. Maybe it wants, does it want those to be strings? Yes, they're all defined as strings over here, so I should have done, whoops, this. Go, try that again. Okay, point out here that this time we got green OK for the create Kraken bot namespace. That is because the Kraken bot namespace already existed, and like I said, idempotent, it is not going to create the Kraken bot namespace again. That's why Ansible is cool. But our CronJob in the Kraken bot has changed. That seems to have succeeded. Let's Kraken. Okay, there's our cron job, and we can see the schedule. Our next execution of this actually is not going to be until midnight tonight, at which point it should go onto this Kraken Pro market. It should download the data. Again, previous streams, I've gone into more detail about how this Kraken bot actually works, but it will process all of the data that it finds and find a market in which to invest. And once it does that, I should get a message in my Element client here. So wherever I am, I will be updated to know exactly what trade my bot has executed. Probably would be more entertaining in terms of a live stream if it actually would execute that trade right now. Perhaps there's a way I can tickle it into doing so. I'm not sure I'm going to try that at the moment. I think I'm going to say that this is looking good, and next week we will check in on the results of this. I will show you all of the messages that it posts, and I will show you all of the trades that it makes, and we can see, have I gone up from 89.66 USD or have I gone down from 89.66 USD? You can place your bets in the comments. And one more thing I want to mention about this is monitoring. So obviously I can come onto this Kraken Pro dashboard to monitor it, and I have this Element chat for monitoring, and I also have Grafana deployed. We can just take a quick look here. And at the moment, I am only using this to monitor more of my infrastructure. So if we, what I mean by that is is the server on which my Kubernetes cluster is deployed, as well as the virtual machines that make up this cluster. That is what I have in the dashboard, but it's not this org, it's this org. This might be a bit of a pain to load on a live stream. Again, network issues. But the monitoring for the actual infrastructure that I have is done on Grafana. And at the moment, I don't have anything in Grafana that would apply to the internals of the Kraken bot. It may be that the Kraken bot should just post its log messages to an Element chat, and that's the end of it. And then Grafana is used to monitor the Kubernetes cluster and the CronJob that is executing this. Or maybe I should also do something in in the Kraken bot to have it post something to Grafana. I would also need to deploy something like Prometheus, or what's that? InfluxDB is the other one. A time series database is the general name for what that is. So maybe that is in addition to this application that I want to add. But I think for the time being, I am satisfied with our progress for today. We will check back in next time. And I think we're good to go. Thank you very much for joining me. I will remind you that the chats on Matrix are available 24/7, and I also host a discourse server, which is here, discourse.eom.dev, and I do post these live streams there subsequently, or subsequent to them. So if you would like to join the chat over here, you may feel free to do so. Also, I will be posting it on YouTube, so you can, of course, comment there. So thank you very much for joining me. I will see you next week. Toodaloo.